Imagine spending tens of thousands of dollars renovating your kitchen, insisting that it'll improve the resale value of your home. New everything. Cabinets, countertops, appliances, the backsplash you spent 3 weeks picking out. You love it and intend to make every dollar back that you've spent on it, and possibly even more. But then when you list your home and buyers come through, the offers don't move the way that you expect. Or worse, you get negative feedback on the kitchen you just spent all that money renovating, with the intent to be able to sell your home for more money. Maybe one buyer says she'd want to repaint the cabinets, and another says something about wanting to replace the appliances. And you're standing there thinking, I just put so much money into this renovation. I need to recoup that. What happened? This is one of the more costly mistakes homeowners make when they're getting ready to sell their homes. Hi, my name is Hannah Garcia. I'm a realtor licensed in Wisconsin and Illinois, and this is my channel, Heartland Homes with Hannah. I was also recently selected for the Realtors Association of South Central Wisconsin's inaugural class of 40 Under 40, which recognizes rising leaders in the real estate industry. So if you're thinking about selling your home and want to work with a rising leader in real estate, check the link in the description to set up a free consultation with me. Also in the description will be a link to the announcement that the association I belong to published. The properties that we're walking through today have already sold and are no longer available. They'll just be used as visuals for today's video. Today I want to talk about something that I think is oversimplified a lot. What renovations and improvements should you make in order to increase the value of your home before selling it? We'll be talking about how to avoid some of the more costly mistakes and about the things that'll bring you a better return on investment, shortened to ROI. And we'll also talk about additional ways to increase the perceived value in the eyes of a potential buyer. Let's start here. Your home is yours. It's the place where your life has happened. And anything that you've done to it to make it more comfortable for you, more beautiful in your eyes, and more functional for your lifestyle, that absolutely was worth doing. I think it's all too common that people get worked up about resale value long before they ever even intend on selling the house. In other words, I'll never tell you not to personalize your home just out of fear of decreasing the resale value when it comes time to sell. If you renovated your master bathroom because you wanted a soaking tub and you've used it 100 times, that renovation served its purpose. Any renovation is worth doing if you believe it'll improve your quality of life. Now, with that disclaimer out of the way, what gets complicated is when people start expecting that personal enjoyment translates directly into a higher sales price. And sometimes it does, but also sometimes it doesn't. And it has nothing to do with the quality of work that's been done, but it's because value in real estate is filtered through other people's priorities and a market that has its own ceilings regardless of what's inside your walls. Buyers aren't walking through your home thinking about what you spent on the work that's been done to it. If anything, they might be thinking about what they'll have to spend to customize it to their own liking. Every buyer brings their own sense of what a home should feel like, what the kitchen, the bathrooms, the bedroom should be stylized for. Some of them will walk into your lovingly renovated space and see exactly what they want. Others are going to see things they want to change. That's just the nature of personal taste. This is especially true with high-end, highly personalized finishes. The more specific renovation is to your aesthetic, a bold tile choice, custom millwork, a very particular hardwood finish, the more polarizing that's probably going to be. Of course, it might attract someone who shares your exact taste and it's going to be perfect for them and they form an immediate, deep connection to the home. Or it's going to have the opposite effect and it might attract someone who sees something that they'd have to live with until they can afford to change it. And that's not to say you should have renovated your space with beige walls and builder grade everything. In fact, I'll always argue against going with boring decorations or finishes. But it's worth understanding that when it comes time to sell your home, the lens shifts a little. You're no longer optimizing for your life in the home. You're instead trying to help potential buyers see their life in the home. So before we talk about anything cosmetic, I want to talk about something that I think is usually underappreciated by most sellers. The best kind of renovation you can do is one that increases your square footage. Increasing your square footage is one of the best ROIs because at the end of the day, square footage is one of the fastest things adding value into your home. And the foundational condition of the home. If you watch the first video in this series about all the preparations you should do before you list your home, you'll know I talk a lot about pre-listing inspections. And I'm going to touch on that again here because it's one of the best tools and roadmaps we can use to have the smoothest transaction possible. When a buyer walks into a home and finds maintenance that kept getting put off, like a roof that's aging not so gracefully, or an HVAC system that's struggling, or moisture stains on the basement wall, caulk that's not cracked and that's pulling away from the tub, or flooring that's worn down, a potential buyer is going to start connecting all the dots of things that haven't been maintained. They're not going to think, how much will this isolated issue cost to fix? But they'll likely start to question if there's something deeper going on. Start wondering what else could be a problem that they can't see. This causes a buyer to lose confidence that a home like that is even worth pursuing. A buyer who loses trust in a home during a showing, or worse, that trust gets lost during the inspection period, is a buyer who's going to negotiate hard or walk away entirely or write an offer so low it's almost insulting. In those cases, they aren't trying to take advantage of you, but it's because they're scared. If I were their agent in a scenario with a house like that, I'd advise caution too. Uncertainty can cost people a lot of money, energy, and effort. So it's best to avoid uncertainty when possible. So before you think about a single cosmetic upgrade, I'd encourage you to do a pre-listing inspection of your home. The inspector looks at it through the eyes of someone seeing it for the first time. They'll give back a report, and we use that report to decide what to fix. And if it's not worth fixing, we'll disclose it to potential buyers. And we'll price it accordingly. Pricing was the second video in this series, so if you haven't watched the 2 previous videos, I recommend you take a look at those before we move on. But anyways, a roof that has 5 or 6 good years left is going to show up on an inspection report. It's going to become a negotiation point. Buyers are going to ask for credits or repairs. Like I said earlier, some might even walk away. So you want to get ahead of that with a pre-listing inspection. Knowing what you're working with before you list gives you options. It gives you time to fix it or, again, price accordingly. And if you don't want to fix it, you can disclose that and be proactive. And disclosing proactively actually builds trust with the buyer rather than letting it come out in their own inspections. Same goes for the HVAC and really any visible wear and tear that accumulates over years of normal life. These things are so important and will make the whole process more streamlined. And if you can put yourself in the buyer's shoes, because realistically you probably are going to be a buyer if you're selling a home, you're probably going to need a new one. But wouldn't you want the people selling your next home to be prepared like this? I'm big on being proactive and preventing headaches as best we can. So once this foundation is solid, literally the foundation of the home, as well as any fixable improvements, once that is handled, I want to talk about giving your walls a fresh coat of paint. This is one of the least expensive things that you can do before listing, and it also has one of the highest returns. Never underestimate the power of painting, especially if you have bold or more unique colors on your walls. Fresh paint just livens up a room. It makes a home feel new, even when nothing structural has changed. It removes the visual memory of the people who have lived there before, and it gives buyers a blank canvas that lets them imagine their own style in the space. Light, fresh neutrals tend to work best, and I know those colors aren't exciting. Trust me, I'm an artist that loves bold color, but light neutrals are easy to see past. They're easy to imagine a future against, and most importantly, they're easy to cover for the next homeowner when they decide to personalize the space next. What tends to work against sellers is when strong paint colors dominate a space. A deep navy dining room or terracotta bedroom isn't bad taste at all. Like I've been saying, I love color, and I love interesting colors. But think about it like this. There's a time and a place to stand out, and trying to appeal to the masses is not the time to be standing out. Buyers see bold choices, and if the bold choice doesn't align with their specific taste, they're immediately going to think about what it would take to change it. And bold paint colors can be especially a pain in the ass to cover. That's a mental tax that can be avoided before they even step foot in the home. Painting doesn't have to be a whole home project. Just focus on the spaces that buyers spend the most time during a showing. That would be the entryway, the main living areas, the kitchen, and the primary bedroom. And don't forget to freshen up the trim. Fresh white on the trim next to clean, neutral walls is another one of those details that just helps everything feel more polished. Lighting is another big piece of this. A room with great natural light feels open, healthy, and alive. Buyers respond to it almost immediately. And I know I'm a sucker for good lighting too. Quick and easy ways to improve the lighting in your home is, number one, clean the windows. Like really deep clean inside and out. It helps let more light in, and you can't go wrong with more natural light. Number two, replace dim or burnt out light bulbs. This one should be a no-brainer, but sometimes you gotta verbalize those no-brainers. Now, number three, while you're at it, make sure all the light bulbs in the same area also have the same warmth as one another. There's nothing more disconnected than having 3 warm light bulbs and 1 cool tone. It just doesn't look good, and it's a really easy thing to avoid. And speaking of warm versus cool tone lights, in rooms in the home that may come off a little darker, I highly recommend using warm light bulbs over cool light bulbs in those areas. Cool light bulbs in that scenario are going to make that room feel a little more sterile, and we want people to feel warm and welcoming. In other words, artificial lighting matters a lot and is something that you have easy control over. It's especially important for evening showings or for the photography portion of the process. That will be the first thing your buyers see of your home online. And another tip, layering lighting can be a really good thing too. That's where you have some ambient overhead lighting, as well as some table and floor lamps. Layering your lights like this makes a room feel more like a home and less like an office. And like I said, you want the home to feel inviting. Now, as for kitchens and bathrooms, these are the rooms buyers talk about the most and obsess over the longest. So let's spend some extra time talking about these rooms. And I want to be fully transparent with you. A full kitchen remodel is one of the renovations that most often fails to return its full cost when it comes to the resale value. Of course, it's not a rule, but it is pretty common. There are markets and price points in which it makes sense to do, but generally speaking, if you're renovating the kitchen specifically to get a higher ROI on the sale, the math is usually pretty difficult to make that work out. It's unlikely that however much you spend on it, you'll be able to add that much into the sales price. So if the sole purpose of the remodel is to be able to charge more than the asking price, just skip it. What buyers usually care about in the kitchen is whether it feels functional and reasonably current, and obviously clean, of course, too. They want to be able to picture themselves cooking in it. They want to feel like the space is easily organized. And if I were to tell you to do anything in this space, getting new hardware is almost embarrassingly impactful for how little it costs to do. Swapping out hardware is a quick and inexpensive thing that can modernize the space a little bit if the space does in fact feel a little dated. In fact, I would almost always advise changing the pulls and knobs, given how easy and inexpensive it is. It can really make an entire kitchen feel refreshed. But anything more than that is like asking to lose money. You don't need all new cabinets if the existing ones are solid. And if you were to do any additions, I mean, you can't go wrong with adding more storage space, but replacing all the cabinets isn't necessary. Painting them, when done well, with proper prep and quality paint, can update a kitchen dramatically for a fraction of the cost of buying everything completely new. Countertops matter to buyers, but again, clean and presentable often reads better than you would expect. If the countertops are in decent shape, staging the space thoughtfully, with having fewer items on the counter, better lighting, maybe a bowl of something fresh, is more than enough than decking out counters with expensive materials. Save that for your next home. The same principle applies in the bathroom. As long as it's clean and feels fresh, you're golden. The one thing I will say is I've noticed does matter quite a bit. More and more, I'm seeing homes that don't have a single bathtub in the entire home. And so far, I've never seen that read well for a potential buyer. In fact, in almost every home that doesn't have a bathtub, I've seen that be a problem. So if your home doesn't have one, that is something I would absolutely tell you to spend the money to have installed. But other than that, there really isn't anything big I'd say is worth doing in terms of adding resale value. The simple things go a long way, such as recaulking around the tub or replacing dated faucets, maybe adding a new mirror and making sure the grout is clean or regrouting entirely. These are relatively modest investments that have an effect on how buyers perceive the space. A bathroom that feels well maintained shows that the seller took good care of the home. Now, as for the flooring, something you probably don't think about too often is flooring continuity. In other words, when the flooring changes frequently as you move through the home, hardwood here, tile there, a different tile in the next room, carpet somewhere else, it starts to fragment the home's sense of coherence. Each transition is a small interruption to the visual flow. And of course, I'm not saying you need to refloor your entire house, but there are opportunities to create continuity in key areas, like the living room and the dining room, or the hallway that connects spaces. It tends to make the home feel larger and more unified if you do have higher continuity. And the condition of the floors matters just as much as the material. Worn carpets that have been in place for 15 years can turn into a point of negotiation. So can scratched hardwood that hasn't been maintained. That can pull down the perceived value of an otherwise beautiful floor. Sometimes refinishing or deep cleaning is more than enough, but sometimes replacement is worth it. Determining if something is worth it is a calculation that heavily depends on the home itself as well as the market it is in. But consistency across the flooring in your home can help make the home feel larger and flow better. Good floor transitions and furniture placement that doesn't interrupt movement throughout the space all contributes to the home feeling more open. And speaking of furniture and how the home flows, I want to spend some real time talking about staging. I think this is a fairly misunderstood part of preparing the home for market. The way I think about it is this. Staging is about creating clarity. It's about helping buyers understand how a space functions and helping them feel comfortable enough in that space to imagine their own life there, just like we've been talking about throughout the rest of this video. It serves as a reference point for how much furniture they can fit in a space without that space starting to feel overcrowded. It helps give a clear perspective of the size of the room. When a buyer walks through a home, they're doing a lot of mental work simultaneously. They're processing the layout, noticing lights, and the size. They're trying to understand whether their furniture will fit. They're asking themselves, consciously or not, whether this place could feel like home. So the purpose of staging is to help answer those questions for them. Furniture scale is one of the biggest things people get flat out wrong. It's completely understandable because we choose furniture for how we live in a space, not for how it photographs or how it reads during a 30-minute showing. For example, a sofa that's perfect for large gatherings can make a living room sometimes feel cramped and dark in listing photos. Or a dining table that seats 8 people comfortably can make a dining room feel like it doesn't have room to walk through. Some ways to make a room feel a little better is pulling the furniture away from the walls a little bit or removing some pieces that compete for visual space, as well as creating clear pathways through a room. These are simple things that can change how a space reads almost immediately. And if there's something you should know about me is I love rearranging furniture to make rooms feel larger. So when we walk through your home together, I look at your home with a fresh pair of eyes, essentially the way a buyer would for the first time. And a lot of what we do isn't buying anything new. It's rearranging or removing things, and it's simplifying the space. Clutter makes the space feel smaller, darker, and less put together, which is not what you want in this situation. When buyers feel overwhelmed by the visual noise of clutter, they default to being cautious. Instead of seeing the room for what it is and the potential it has, buyers start seeing you. And if your goal is to have them see themselves, that's not maybe the best way to get that done. Awkward spaces are another place where staging is really important. Almost every home has a room or a corner of the home that doesn't quite make sense. This could be anything from an oddly shaped space to a bonus room. It's easy to interpret these spaces as dead weight, but we don't want to give the impression that there's any square footage going to waste. So we'll give that space a clear function, even if it's a simple desk and a lamp in the awkward corner, or a reading chair by the window, a dedicated workout space or yoga area in the basement. You're just giving them a way to interpret the space as useful. Making the space feel and lived in is hugely important. Now that we've covered the interior, let's move on to the exterior. There's a moment that happens before any buyer walks through your door, and it's the moment they pull up, or the moment they see the first photo in your listing online. That first impression, before they've ever even touched the doorknob, sets a baseline for everything that follows. A home with clean landscaping, a freshly painted front door, well-maintained walkways, and lights that work is far more desirable than one with peeling paint, an overgrown yard, and a porch that's seen better days. The second house would make anyone feel skeptical, and skepticism is hard to undo once it's been established. You want the potential buyer to want to come inside and see the rest of the home. And if there's outdoor living space, like a deck, a patio, or a screen porch, we'll have to stage that with the same thoughtfulness that we would bring to the interior. Okay, let's consider some utilities now. This is one of those topics that's top of mind for the buyer. They're often thinking about what's it going to cost to live there. Utility costs, particularly heating in Wisconsin or Illinois winters, are always a factor when it comes to affordability. So investing in energy efficient windows, a well-maintained furnace, proper insulation in the attic can go a long way in terms of adding value. These aren't glamorous things, of course, but it's something worth considering. A home that's clearly been updated for efficiency or that documented low utility bills is a home that feels more financially manageable for people. There's a broader conversation about the health of the home that I think is becoming more important to buyers too, such as indoor air quality, ventilation, and moisture control, because lack of moisture control contributes to mold and air quality issues, and mold is the worst. These are not fringe concerns. They're coming up in conversations a lot more as buyers become more and more prepared and educated. So it's definitely something to keep in mind, and any ventilation or moisture control issues will come up in the pre-listing inspection. or they should at least. And I want to say something clearly here because I think it's important and not everyone's going to tell you this. But neighborhoods have price ceilings, meaning there's a price range that the market supports for homes in any given area. And that ceiling is set by the comparable sales. Comparable sales, or comps, as you'll hear a lot of realtors say, are what the other homes in the nearby area have sold for. No renovation, no matter how beautiful or expensive, can push a home past that ceiling in any reliable way. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't invest in your home before selling. It means you should be honest with yourself about what you're investing in and why. If you're renovating to help the home sell faster, to reduce negotiation friction, or to attach buyers and stronger offers within the range the market already supports, those are all super reasonable investments. But if you're doing renovations expecting to add dollar for dollar return or push past that neighborhood ceiling, that's where the math gets unreliable at best, and at worst, super costly. The improvements that tend to work most consistently are improvements that make homes easier to buy. So I'll leave you with this. I've been doing this for long enough to know that selling a home is rarely just a transaction. It's the end of a chapter, complicated, sometimes messy and sad. Sometimes it's exhilarating or exhausting, and often both at once. The home you're selling is a place where you've lived your life. It's bittersweet, and I completely understand that. And it's important to acknowledge that side of things too, because we can remove the emotional aspect of things and move through the process more analytically. What you're really doing when you prepare a home for sale is you're creating the conditions for a potential buyer to form a connection to the home. You're helping someone else see possibility in a place that already means something to you. And the good news is you don't have to do that alone, and you don't have to guess what buyers want. That's what my job is. So if you're thinking about selling in Wisconsin or Illinois and want to hire a rising leader in real estate, someone with recognition from their local association, then check the link in the description to book your consultation with me. As always, the consultation is completely free. And if this video helped you at all, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn your notifications on so you never miss a video from me. We've got 3 more videos in this seller series, so stay tuned. Up next, we'll be talking all about appraisals. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.